Welcome to another episode of the Left of Lansing podcast with Pat Johnston. A progressive insight into Michigan's political and cultural world. And of course, an entertaining podcast designed to shine a light on how to make Michigan's political machine work for the people. Now, from the Left of Lansing headquarters, located in his attic, here's the award-winning Pat Johnston.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to another installment of Michigan's premier progressive podcast. I am Pat Johnston, and please forgive me here, but I'm trying to recover from this pretty nasty cold that I picked up last weekend. Voice is not completely all there, as you can hear, but I am going to try to persevere because that's what I do for you, the listener. All right, that's how I sacrifice. All right, hey, please let me take this quick moment here to make this announcement before I get started on this week's show because it is important. I just want to take a quick second to highlight a big event that our friends from Distill Social are doing this Saturday, July 27th. It's called Rally Against Project 2025, and it's being held in 4 different locations at the same time Saturday night in Ferndale, Ann Arbor, Holland, and Marquette. It runs from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern in all 4 areas, and it's just a way to highlight the Fascist Project 2025 that Christian nationalists from the Heritage Foundation and some people from the Hillsdale College would like to enact, and they're counting on their dear leader, Donald Trump, to get into office so that way they can enact certain parts of it, if not all of it. Now, Project 2025 wants to destroy the administrative state, so corporations will then get to decide how much they want to pollute our water and airways. It also wants to attack abortion rights and erase abortion care across the country. It also wants to divert money to for-profit religious charter schools while destroying public schools. It wants to end Head Start across the nation and free public school meals. It wants to also enact a flat tax, which just kills the middle and lower class while further enriching the corporate donor class, i.e. Trump's people. Oh, and it also wants to slash the corporate tax as well, but I think you pretty much knew that. And I'm just giving you some of the lowlights there. So again, show your solidarity and help publicize this dangerous and anti-American, anti-democratic screed known as Project 2025 this Saturday, July 27th at Distill Social's Rally Against Project 2025. I will post links on my site, leftoflansing.com, also wherever you get your podcasts. But just go to distillsocial.com and click on events, and you'll find it there as well, so that way you can register. Okay, now, let's see. Did anything happen the last time we talked, which was during the Republican convention and just days after the Trump shooting? Did anything really happen of significance?
But Donald Trump wants to take our country backward. He and his extreme Project 2025 agenda will weaken the middle class. Like, we know we got to take this seriously. And can you believe they put that thing in writing? Read it. It's 900 pages. But here's the thing. When you read it, you will see Donald Trump intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. He intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations and make working families foot the bill. They intend to end the Affordable Care Act and take us back then to a time when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. Remember what that was like? Children with asthma, women who survived breast cancer, grandparents with diabetes. America has tried these failed economic policies before, but we are not going back. We are not going back.
Yeah, I'll say something happened since then. This past Sunday, history happened when President Joe Biden announced that he would indeed step down and no longer run for a second term. And just minutes after he dropped that announcement, he released another statement where he gave a full endorsement to Vice President Kamala Harris. And give the vice president credit because she quickly worked to gather support from most of the Democratic Party officials, and she obtained enough delegates in less than 48 hours to secure that nomination. And that was impressive, and that also showed a lot of impressive skills, skills on her part, that she was able to get the party to coalesce around her in such a quick fashion. I mean, that was impressive. And that also showed some impressive skills on her part that she was able to get the party to coalesce around her in such a quick fashion. Very, very impressive. And as you heard in that clip that I played from her campaign appearance in Wisconsin earlier this week, the voters are fired up. It's almost like the Democratic Party base received this sudden jolt of energy and optimism again. Yes, optimism, something that I predicted would happen once Biden decided to step down. For me, I pretty much thought that the writing was on the wall when Epic MRA released its new poll in Michigan this past Sunday morning, and the poll showed Trump leading Biden by 7 percentage points. That was the highest margin there for Trump. Even more, some 46% of Michigan Democrats believed that Biden should have stepped down, while over half of independent voters said the same. This was just not sustainable, everyone. It wasn't. It was hurting down-ballot Democrats in the state, and that's huge considering how Democrats are trying to gain the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, but also how Michigan Democrats are trying to keep control of the state House. All right, so this just was not sustainable anymore. And I'm willing to bet that Biden made his decision by last Saturday night before that poll was released, but I'm sure somebody on the Biden team, and I'm sure many Michigan Democrats saw that poll on Sunday morning, and I think that may have played just a little bit of a role, maybe an extra nudge in Biden's final decision. Maybe not, but I think so. Regardless, President Biden did the right thing, not only for the party, but for the country. He helped defeat fascism in 2020. He did. And now he's helping defeat it again by stepping aside and passing the torch to a new generation and passing it to Kamala Harris. His accomplishments, many that I have highlighted here during the last few years, will go down as some of the biggest accomplishments in presidential history, including infrastructure improvements, clean energy, the CHIPS Act, getting Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court, and by selecting Kamala Harris as vice president. And as we saw from this past week here, Kamala is pretty good. Is she flawless? Nope. Nobody is. Never believe that a politician is flawless. Not one. I've never known one politician who is flawless. Even those that I admire, like JFK or Bobby Kennedy or an AOC. I don't view them as perfect. I disagree with them on some issues. There were things that JFK and RFK did that I disagreed with. You see, I'm a progressive, not a cult member. I'm not a MAGA cult member. Okay, so I'm never going to glorify a politician or treat them as if they've been touched by the Lord. Unlike what we were seeing at the Republican convention last week, I don't treat anyone like that. But Kamala Harris was my first choice in the presidential primary back in 2020. She had withdrawn from the race by the time Michigan had its primary. So watching her hold her first rally and inspire so much confidence with voters who just felt like that they were in a battle royale for such a long time, at least this last month, I mean, that felt so invigorating. And the vice president is showing how to play offense against Trump and also MAGA, while at the same time projecting an image of what the future can be. That's called effective messaging, and it's called taking the battle to them. In fact, coming up here in a few moments, I'll be talking with someone who's tired of her district being represented by someone who simply refuses to look towards the future and someone who relies on hate and cynicism to stay in power. Her name is Sarah May-Seward, and she's running for the 51st State House District, home of the MAGA fascist himself, Maddock. Yes, the same Maddock, who said a civil war would happen if MAGA extremists kept getting arrested for their roles in the January 6th insurrection. You remember that? I mean, that also includes his nutty wife and former GOP co-chair, Maddock, who's also one of those who took part in the Michigan fake elector scheme, and now she's facing felony charges for taking part of that scheme. Yes, that Maddock. But Maddock said in regards to his wife and other MAGA Republicans who tried to steal the 2020 election, and I quote, he said this about a year ago, he said, but what's going to happen before that? Someone's going to get pissed off. They're going to shoot someone. That's what's going to happen. Or we're going to have a civil war or some sort of revolution. That's where this is going. And when that happens, we're going to get squashed. The people here are going to be the first ones to go. You see, Maddock there told all of these supporters of the January 6th insurrectionists, especially those in Michigan who tried to overthrow democracy. See, according to Matt, he said, by arresting people for breaking the law and trying to thwart democracy, the government was going to cause a civil war by provoking, you see, it will be the government provoking MAGA extremists to go on a killing rampage. And then the government will have to kill all MAGA. I mean, that's the kind of crazy talk. That's the kind of extreme Christian nationalism this guy represents. In an article about the candidates, Democrat Sarah May-Seward explained some of her priorities, including polluter pay. And she is backing polluter pay bills, due in part because of how a chemical spill in the Huron River back in 2022 devastated some local businesses in Milford. That incident is why Sarah May-Seward wants to help pass polluter pay, because thanks to Michigan law, businesses make us pay for their cleanup right now. So Sarah's already telling people in her district in which she would like to help people. She's trying to describe and give policy proposals in ways to help people and help her district. In that same article, when asked about his priorities, Maddock said, quote, keep fighting all the bad things the left is doing. Me don't like left. Me don't like Democrats. Me don't want to get things done. He's got no agenda. He's got no brilliant ideas in helping his people, and he's fine with companies apparently polluting major waterways in his district and having the people there pay for the cleanup. Maddock is there to just become a name and earn a paycheck. Then when his term's over, maybe he has dreams of becoming another in a long line of right-wing talk show hosts or something like that. Remember, this is the same clown who tweeted pictures of supposed illegal immigrants being flown into Metro Detroit Airport by Governor Whitmer. You remember that? Okay, do you remember that from a few months ago? Here's the thing, that's not what happened. It was actually the Gonzaga men's basketball team getting off a plane for the NCAA tournament that was taking place in Detroit last spring. But all Maddock saw were people of color coming down the stairs of an airplane, so to him, they were bad. And we wonder why we read stories like the one from our good friend of the podcast, Michigan Advance's John King, in which white supremacists marched in Howell last weekend shouting, "We love Hitler, we love Trump." Now, that incident happened in Livingston County, which is not Maddock's district, as that's located in Oakland County. But the sentiment there that was being spewed by those white supremacists is some of the same sentiment that we see from the MAGA right wing. And people like Maddock, they love to feed into it. And that's why getting someone like Sarah May-Seward in the office is key to Democrats keeping the majority and gaining seats in the state house. Remember, yes, the presidency and Congress are crucially important this fall, but so is keeping the state trifecta blue, as we've witnessed with so many progressive or common sense policies that have been passed here in Michigan these past 2 years. Change happens much faster on the state level and can improve lives in a faster fashion on the state level. Sarah May-Seward is my guest here in just a moment. You're listening to LOL.
You're listening to Left of Lansing. If the podcast isn't enough and you are in need of more Pat, follow him on Twitter and like him on Facebook. Also, don't forget you can read more of his thoughts and hear an archive of past episodes on leftoflansing.com.
Well, we've brought up Republican State Representative Maddock perhaps a few times here on the podcast of late, and his name may have popped up, here and there, and maybe his wife's too. He's pure MAGA, and his extreme disregard for our democratic institutions, his disdain for the majority of the people that he's supposed to represent, and his bigotry must be defeated at the polls this year. Not only that, but if he's gone, not only is that a huge loss for the MAGA movement, I think, but it's also a major victory for District 51 and for the state of Michigan, since that'll mean that Democrats will probably increase their majority in the state house. Sarah May-Seward is coming back to have a rematch against Matt Maddock this fall, and she's my guest here on this week's Left of Lansing. Sarah, I've been looking forward to talking with you for quite some time, so thanks for being on this week. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I've been definitely looking forward to this.
Well, first, let's talk about District 51. I believe it's entirely in Oakland County, running from west to east, from Milford to Commerce Township, and then north to Highland Township on the west side, and White Lake Township to the northeast side. Am I close there?
Yep. It also includes Davisburg.
Okay. All right. And Davisburg as well. Don't want to forget that. How long have you lived in the area?
My entire life. I grew up in Highland, and then in 6th grade moved to Milford. When I was about 32, I moved to White Lake.
So what do you like most about your district, and why do you want to fight for the people from your district, and why do you want to represent them in Lansing?
Our community deserves actual representation. I mean, for 6 years we've had, and even before that, we've had basically absentee representation. Our seat in the House has been left vacant or ignored. And so I'm running because I believe that our district deserves nice things. We deserve to have a say in what goes on in Lansing and in Oakland County. We're often ignored even in Oakland County. That's why I'm on multiple boards for Oakland County. Anytime a seat comes up, I'm like, well, there's nobody on that board that represents anywhere in North or West Oakland. So I typically join them. And now I'm on 7.
So when you say maybe your area tends to get ignored a little bit than other parts of Oakland County, what parts of Oakland County are you talking about? Like Royal Oak or
Royal Oak,
that?
Ferndale, West Bloomfield.
Okay.
There's a lot of focus on Pontiac, which is good because now it's shifting more towards us, and Pontiac is technically the heart of Oakland County. But yeah, I mean, even mental health care services are often overlooked when we're allocating different resources out into the county, like crisis services, SUD care, all of that. We are often just overlooked.
And you said that you've been on multiple boards there for Oakland County. What kinds of boards are we talking about here, Sarah?
So I'm currently on the executive board for the Oakland Community Health Network. So that handles mental health care and care for people with cognitive and behavioral and also physical disabilities within Oakland County. I'm also on the SUD, Substance Abuse Disorder Committee, through the OCHN board. And that handles a lot of getting resources for testing strips and Narcan out into the different communities. I'm the vice chair of the Sanitary Appeals Board for Oakland County. That handles a lot of septic issues when you're replacing your septic and say the health department denies that. You eventually will come to our board and we get to work with you and hopefully make it so that you can replace your septic, but also so that our waters are protected. I'm the chair of the Food Service Appeals Board in Oakland County. And when I was placed on this board, I'm the only person who works in the food industry on the board. I am on the Oakland Neighborhood and Housing Development Board. I'm on the Citizen Advisory Committee for that. We worked with HUD to ensure that language included caregivers for people with disabilities, because a lot of times HUD housing only thinks of the person with disabilities, but we're forgetting that they often have caregivers, so that housing is not just senior housing that's accessible, but also just housing for families that might have a person with disability in it. I'm also on the Children's Issues Board for the state. And I think that's all the boards right now.
That's it? Really? Yeah. It doesn't sound like you really do much here, Sarah. Come on now. You got to pick it up
No,
a
not
bit.
at all. They're not paid positions. We get mileage. I think last week I got a check for about $14. So this is strictly because I firmly believe that our area deserves to have a voice and a say in our county and when big decisions are being made and funds are being allocated.
Forgive me because you went through a bunch of boards there, but a couple that I wrote down: mental health care, disabilities. Why were those some areas that you really wanted to focus on?
My daughter is 20 years old now, but she has quite a few diagnoses. She has schizencephaly, hydrocephalus, cerebral palsy. She is on this autism spectrum. And for the first 8 years of her life, I was a single parent with no help. And in trying to work with all of these different, the assistance that's out there and the different programs that are out there, it felt like I was just always in this circle of trying to get the help I needed, but not really getting it from the places that everybody tells you to go to when you need it. That's housing, accessible housing. That's her medical equipment and a bed for her because she can't just lay flat on a bed. And back when she was 8 years old, you couldn't go on Amazon and just order an adjustable bed. Out of frustration, I was like, who makes these decisions? Who decides that these providers get millions of dollars from our county and yet they're not providing the help that people like me and my daughter need? So I just ended up researching and finding out who it was, and I got on the boards.
Is that what got you to decide that you would like to get into the game and that you wanted to run for a state house seat? I think you first ran in 2022. All these experiences and meeting all of these different people and having all of these different discussions and dealing with all these different experiences that you got to experience, is that what helped make your decision that, hey, I'd like to get in there and represent these people, represent people who really don't have a voice and speak up for them?
That's one of the reasons. Some of the boards were actually after I ran the first time. I mean, I've been trying to get on the Oakland Community Health Network board for like 7 years now. Every time there's a vacancy, I applied. Yeah, it's that people like me and my family deserve a voice. And because the way that my brain reacts to frustration and being worn down is to keep fighting, I figured I could fight for people who they don't have the bandwidth. It's really hard. It's really exhausting. And you feel very ignored and just down about it. That's on top of trying to take care of your loved one who has disabilities and all of the work that takes, and trying to work to support them too.
You said the term here, absentee representation, and I think that's how you're describing Matt Maddock and his so-called work that he's doing in Lansing for your district. Is that what made you then want to come back here in 24? Because you lost to him 2 years ago. You did pretty well, though. I think you garnered around, 44% of the vote. Is that why you wanted to come back here and give it another try? Because you feel so passionate about the people that you like to serve and especially the issues that you focus on?
Absolutely. This is my community. I mean, I've lived here my entire life. I graduated from Milford High. My daughter graduated from Milford High. We made sure that when we moved to White Lake, we were still in the boundaries of Huron Valley School District because this is our community. These people raised me. So I'm never going to stop fighting for them. And it has nothing to do with party. If we had an okay Republican that was in the seat, I probably wouldn't be so fired up to keep running. But every time that somebody has run against Matt Maddock, they've moved the needle, but they've never ran again. And then you lose that name recognition.
Right.
And you lose all the work that was already done by the previous candidate. So I just don't give up very easily.
I mean, that was one of the reasons why I decided to start this podcast, because I wanted to highlight people like you, Sarah, who just keep doing the work and who refuse to give up, and to let everybody around the state know that there are people like you. And I think if everybody gets to know everybody and understands what's happening around the state, that will help galvanize all of us to defeat people like Matt Maddock at the polls and replace them with people who have so much invested in their community, people like you, Sarah. I saw in the Hometown Life newspaper earlier this month, I think, that you listed some other priorities that are high on your list in this campaign. And one of them is something that I've been keeping my eye on, and that's polluter pay. I've had Sean McBrady of Clean Water Action Michigan on the show to talk about that very issue of polluter pay, which they are really focused on passing. And what they want to do, and what everybody who supports polluter pay wants, is to make corporations have some skin in the game for the waste that they leave behind in our communities. And I also saw that you would like to give extra protections, or work on giving extra protections for OSHA workers. Sarah, what is it about these two particular issues that you really want to highlight during your campaign? Why are these some main focal points this time around?
So for polluter pay, it hits pretty close to home. Our major river here in my district, the Huron River, it has been polluted by the same company 3 times. And this is the river that I grew up canoeing on. Our 6th grade trip in middle school was walking down to the river and hopping in a canoe. You can no longer trust that water because Tribar has dumped PFAS in it twice, and they dumped hexavalent chromium in it. And that's the Aaron Brockovich chemical. And yet they don't have to pay for the cleanup. They don't have to pay for the testing and the monitoring of it. And our area is filled with fishers, hunters, and you can't eat the fish from the river now. And I'm still worried about the fact that a lot of our wildlife drink from the river or from parts that come off of the river. How can we trust that the deer that we hunt are edible? So it's extremely frustrating that the taxpayers have had to pay for the cleanup and the monitoring of the rivers. And I believe that polluters should pay. I mean, Tribar is still worth millions of dollars. They haven't taken a hit at all.
Which is why I guess I always viewed this as like a double taxation on the people. In order to get these companies to move into a certain community, the community has to agree to give a certain amount of tax breaks or tax incentives, which we are paying for. And then when they leave, we have to then pay for the mess that they leave behind.
Well, and it's like 3 times the incentive for them to just keep dumping because they also get to use our water treatment plants to dump their water into. And that puts a burden on those water treatment plants also. And then it puts the onus on the people in that community and their water treatment plant instead of the polluter.
All right. And then maybe then explain how you would like to help strengthen OSHA or some protection for OSHA.
It's beyond OSHA. It's outside of OSHA that I'm interested in. So in the service industry, I'm a bartender. In the service industry, I mean, we've all seen videos of people attacking McDonald's workers and getting violent. We've seen people attacking customer service, people in retail, and I personally have gotten multiple concussions bartending because I've been attacked for doing my job. I was once punched in the head for asking somebody for their ID. And then another time I cut a couple women off because they were very drunk and, you know, just nicely, hey, I'll give you a free Red Bull. You don't have to leave yet. It's 1:30. You might as well just stay for the extra half an hour and chill so that you can get home safely. And they left. And when I walked out to my car, they jumped me. So we need additional protections and kind of like enhanced sentencing. If you assault somebody, yes, you can be charged. But if you assault somebody who's on the job, that puts a lot of stress on that worker. I can't do anything because I could lose my job. And my job, you know, it pays the bills. So I'm under that stress. And then there's the worry about pressing charges because then what will people say about the establishment? I believe that there should be more enhanced sentencing for people who attack people who are on the job. I mean, road workers get that protection, right?
Right. Well, since we're on this topic, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you, being a bartender and working in the service industry for a number of years, especially right after the pandemic and things have opened back up, have customers, Sarah, been more generous or not? Or is it somewhere in between? What would you say?
There was a time where they were a lot more generous and kind and like grateful that we were there. There weren't a lot of issues. I think that the political environment might be ramping people up because now this past year has probably been the hardest year for me in the service industry. I've been in the service industry in one way or another since I was about 12 and I'm 42 now. And this has probably been the hardest year for me in terms of the way people treat service workers, the tipping culture. I've got lots to say about tipping, but this is the world we live in. And so you should tip people accordingly. We make $3.47 an hour.
Absolutely. And I just have to tell you, Sarah, when I was 18, I worked as a host at a chain restaurant for just 2 weeks because dealing with hungry people, that's difficult. I never, though, had to deal with hungry and drunk people at the same time. And I don't know how some of you guys are able to do that, because sometimes when I go to a bar and I see how the workers are sometimes berated by certain customers, that makes me so sad for the worker. And I know I couldn't do it. In fact, I couldn't do it because at 18, I left that restaurant job and I just went and cut lawns for the local school district, because at least there I didn't have to deal with people. So I get exactly what you're saying. And moving on here, if you don't mind, I read a New Republic story from 2020 right in the middle of the pandemic where you were featured in that story.
Right.
And you were calling for an end to tipped wages. And it highlighted how you were once part of the one fair wage movement. I was wondering if you could talk about that and if you're still part of that movement.
So the one fair wage movement, the reason I was a part of that is because I was once again struggling, panicking during the pandemic. You know, they kept shutting us down, opening us up, letting us stay open for just like 4 hours a day with less capacity. And it was a huge struggle. And because of tipped wages, we were not eligible for unemployment because you have to make a certain amount to get unemployment. And I was $174 short and could not get unemployment. And so sitting there, panicking, laying on the couch, crying, calling unemployment, I'm like, how do I get answers to this? Who makes this decision? So we started contacting Gary Peters, trying to make sure that any funds additional to unemployment were also for people who make a tipped wage, who make sub-minimum wage. You know, I called unemployment to get answers, mostly just like asking questions. Well, why is it like this? Why is the system not working right? And I was able to figure out the best way to apply. And I actually made a lot of contacts in doing that within unemployment and the governor's office. And I was on a town hall with AOC. And I decided to use all of those contacts and the information that I had to get myself unemployment. I started helping other people get unemployment. I would do Zoom calls and walk them through the process. I would sit with them and we'd both dial over and over again to get through. And then I'd pass the phone to them. I would travel to their house and just let them use my Wi-Fi hotspot, because a lot of people at that point couldn't even afford internet because it was one of the things they had to cut because we went months without anything. So it was just another thing that I was really frustrated about and didn't give up. But that's how I got involved in One Fair Wage, was that they reached out to me to be the unemployment lead for the state of Michigan. And so I just like took calls all day long, helping people get it.
So that's how you got involved in fighting for like freelance, part-time and sub-minimum wage workers?
Yes, exactly. Yep. One Fair Wage is about giving tipped employees the actual minimum wage plus with tips on top. So that way we still can qualify for things like unemployment and Social Security.
Were you disappointed when you saw that the state Supreme Court ruled that the $15 minimum wage proposal would not be on the ballot this year?
Absolutely. I mean, so there's, good things and bad things about ending the tipped minimum wage, but it was definitely frustrating. How many years have we gotten the signatures and gotten it on the ballot? And in lame duck, it's been pulled back and reworked. It's over and over again. So while the minimum wage in the state of Michigan goes up, we're still just getting raises of like a quarter every 4 years.
I think I saw where you said being a tipped worker, yeah, maybe some nights you're going to do really well, but then there are going to be those other nights that you don't do as well, and you're kind of on the whims of the customer, and that's hard to live day to day. I mean, because if they are on a salary base, they know exactly what's coming in, but not so much for a tipped worker.
Yeah, it's really difficult to budget.
So all these things we've been talking about here, polluter pay, one fair wage, more protections for workers. I'm assuming these are all things that are not really that high in the priority list for one Matt Maddock, right?
Oh, absolutely not. When the hexavalent chromium spill happened, the canoe place that I was talking about, Havner Canoes, they held a press thing that they did where they invited everybody. And I might be wrong, but I believe that the family that owns Havner is pretty Republican. Only Democrats showed up. Our own state rep did not show up to that protest to speak on these polluters just demolishing our river, wrecking property value of the people who live on that river and the people who make their money off of services based around the river. And he didn't put out any information. He didn't make a comment on it. And then as far as wages, I mean, why would he care? He's right. Getting taxpayer money to do nothing. So why would he care?
Right. Well, that just seems apropos for Matt Maddock. I mean, why would he care about a fair wage for everybody in his district? Why would he care about the environmental concerns about those in his district? It seems like he's really only there to enrich himself and maybe those that he deems important, his donors. Sarah, I've been meaning to ask you this one because Maddock also voted against the child marriage ban last year. And while voting against it, I think that he used some anti-trans slurs to explain, in his mind, explain his vote. I mean, right there, that just shows how weird this guy really is.
Yeah, I think that the anti-trans language that was used was actually Runstead's excuse for abstaining.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I want to make sure I don't want to mess that up then. All right. Oh, well, there's another winner there. So.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if I didn't already have the signs for state rep, I might have ran for Senate. However, I have the signs. I'm being fiscally conservative. I'm going to use the signs I have.
Right. Understand. And this was just something I was going through some of my notes when it came to Matt Maddock, because I've talked a lot about him. And I don't know why this feels like it was 5 years ago, but it was just a few months ago when he did sent out that embarrassing tweet about how there are these planes at Metro Airport. And look, they're bringing in all kinds of illegal immigrants to Detroit. Everybody be scared, when it was, in fact, the Gonzaga men's basketball team, which was arriving for the NCAA tournament in Detroit that day. But I mean, again, it was just another example of his blatant racism. I'm sorry. That's exactly what it was. And he put that in full view for everyone.
And he left it up. He just left it up even after he was fact checked. It's insanity. I don't know how anybody takes this man seriously. I don't know about you, but when I make a statement that I'm saying is a fact, I research it before I do it. I don't like being wrong, especially publicly wrong. And he just thrives off of stoking fear and hate and anger. I can't imagine living like that. And I don't want my community to keep living like this.
That is a great way of putting it right there, too. And it's just how MAGA Republicanism is, and he feeds into that. He is facing a primary challenge, but so are you. And her name is Debbie Llewellyn. However, I think there's a catch to your primary race, because according to Bridge, Michigan, Miss Llewellyn and her husband, Tom, they've given money to many conservative causes and campaigns. And this just seems to be a phenomenon, Sarah, that's happening in some other districts across the state where conservatives have seen the light suddenly and are running as Democrats in the primaries. So what's going on there, Sarah? And have you had a chance to meet up with this Debbie Llewellyn at all during this campaign?
No, I got to get coffee with Maddock's primary challenger.
Okay.
That was nice. But I have not met Debbie Llewellyn. I think I've seen one picture of her, which is her Facebook profile picture, because she has it locked down. There's no website. There's zero information about her, except for what we can find is that her and her husband have both donated. I believe that her husband is a Michigan GOP national delegate. Before he edited his LinkedIn profile, he had something to do with the 11th District Republicans. Both of their Facebook profiles, their friends are Patrick Kolbick.
Oh, the former right-wing state senator and the guy who ran for governor back in 2018 and lost. Okay, go on.
Ronnie McDaniel, whatever she's going by now.
Yeah.
Matt Maddock, Michon Maddock. Those are their friends. They obviously don't know how to private their friends on Facebook. I don't understand. I think that the Republicans are a little bit worried this year, especially the extremist ones, because they're watching the trend nationally. I mean, maybe they should have paid attention to that in 2022, but also the Michigan Republican Party is broke. So what's the best way to try to siphon money away from your general election opponent is to run a primary opponent to them, make them spend more money before they can get to the actual general. So I think that might be one of their tactics, but he's obviously worried. So that's nice.
Right. I think that's exactly what's happening. They are afraid of how much your resume and your message is going to resonate with so many people there in your district. One final question. And again, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. We have to at least bring this up because, of course, it was breaking news earlier this week. President Biden announcing his decision to step aside in this election and endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee. First, Sarah, if I could just get your reaction to Biden's announcement, and then maybe you can talk about how him stepping aside, how that will now affect down ballot races, especially your own here on the Democratic side.
So when I got the alert on my phone. That was before he had announced who he was endorsing. I, not gonna lie, I had a little bit of a panic attack. I went to my backyard, sat under a tree, and had my little panic attack. Immediately, my first response was, it better be Harris. He had better endorse Harris, because if not, there's, all of the complications with ballots and access to the fundraising and the infrastructure that's already set up. So there's all of those issues. And there's also the issue of Black women have saved our butts over and over again. And this entire time they've been saying, if it is not Biden, it has to be Harris. And I'm listening to them. I'm hopeful that it will turn out some voters that felt like they couldn't vote for Biden, or that they felt like the Democratic Party wasn't listening when they were calling for a younger candidate. Don't get me wrong. Biden was never my first choice. However, and this was even in 2020. However, once he was the nominee, I'm willing to do anything to keep Trump out of office.
Right.
My family was in a Biden ad, a special buy Biden ad, because I'm willing to do anything to protect my community, my daughter, from Trump's insane policies. So I was in this special buy ad and I had threats, and I'm willing to do it all over again. I would vote for the dog poop in my backyard that I have to clean up every day before I ever voted for Trump.
That's a good bumper sticker right there. I like that one. That's pretty good. And I'll just say this as just to finish it off here. I think there was a lot of tension and I think sometimes some animosity on our side with each other when it came to President Biden stepping down or staying and all that. But since he's made his decision to indeed step down, I think that's freed up some of that tension here already. And we're already seeing that. And I think that you're seeing like this jolt of energy now kind of return back to our side. So I hope it does really help everybody down ballot, especially here in Michigan, because we need to keep the state house blue. And that's why we need people like you fighting for your district. And if there's somebody who'd like to help out or volunteer for your campaign, Sarah, how can they do so?
They can sign up at sarahmayseward.com. There's just a little button to click. You can volunteer, get yard signs, donate. Also, you can just reach out. My number is public. Reach out, say hi. We can talk.
And as everybody just heard here during the last few minutes, you are a great person to talk with. Sarah May-Seward, Democratic candidate for the 51st State House District. Thanks so much for being a guest, and good luck to you in the future. We'll be keeping an eye on your race, because if you can defeat Matt Maddock or his primary challenger, whoever, I do think that it'll signal just how good of an election night it really is for Democrats here in Michigan. So good luck to you. Thank you so much, and take care.
Thank you. I cannot wait.
He spent nearly 25 years working as a liberal voice in conservative talk radio across the state, and he's still a somewhat stable person. It's the Left of Lansing podcast with Pat Johnston. You can find archives of the podcast, plus Pat's musings on other topics in written form at leftoflansing.com. Left of Lansing archives are available wherever you get your podcasts. And now Left of Lansing is available on YouTube. We'd like to thank Audio Boom for distributing all our episodes so we can share progressive, otherwise known as common sense, values across Michigan and the country. Now, here's Pat Johnston.
There are some common themes I'm picking up whenever I talk to so many progressive Democrats running for state or local office. And those common themes are sanity and caring about people. Sarah May-Seward there just illustrated how much she works hard for those who don't have a voice in her district through all of the work that she does on all of those boards that she described that she's on in Oakland County. She's working and then giving a lot of her free time to trying to help improve the lives and the conditions of thousands of people. She's a change maker. You think Matt Maddock cares about those he supposedly represents? Come on. The guy's only there for a bigger payout in the end. He's a racist and a fascist, and he's already shown he only cares about his donors while he has no problem ripping up the U.S. Constitution. He doesn't care about people. Sarah said her district is tired of the absentee representation Matt Maddock gives the people of the 51st District. Let's help Sarah in trying to make her district a better place, which in turn will help make Michigan become a better place. Time now for the Left of Lansing Last Call. CBS News Detroit recently posted this headline, and I wanted to share it with you in case you missed it. It said, Michigan ranks among most welcoming states for LGBTQ plus community. The story reads, Our Leadership, a gay advocacy group, provides an index that ranks states based on where gay and transgender people can live while facing the least discrimination. The index measures the impact that government policies have on the LGBTQ plus residents living in each state, quantifying the economic imperatives for inclusion and the cost of discrimination. States are ranked on the scale from no risk, that's 100, to high risk, that's 0, and Michigan received an overall score of 78.07, classifying it as a low-risk state. This score jumped from the 73.20 score Michigan received in 2023. Okay, so the story also says reasons for Michigan's improving score in this area also includes how state Democrats passed and Governor Whitmer signed into law updates to the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to include protection for gender identity and expression. This means that no Michigander can be fired from a job or evicted from their home over how they identify themselves. And, one could say that Michigan Democrats expanded freedom for a group of people who previously didn't have it, or at least didn't have equal protection. The story also says that Whitmer established Michigan's first ever statewide LGBTQ plus commission, and its main goal is to handle the health, safety, and economic issues those in the community face. Another bill that Governor Whitmer just signed into law that was sponsored by a good friend of the podcast, Democratic State Representative Lori Pohutsky of Livonia, bans the gay panic or trans panic legal defense, which basically allowed defense to argue in court that once they knew the victim's sexual orientation or gender identity, hey, they were justified then in assaulting that person or even killing them. I mean, we had to make a law to stop that from being used as a defense in Michigan. But congratulations to Lori Pohutsky and good job on Governor Whitmer. Also, the CBS Detroit story says Whitmer signed a ban on gay conversion therapy into law, ending a hateful, demoralizing, and dehumanizing non-scientific practice that tries to change the sexual orientation of children. As Equality Michigan Director Aaron Knott said in Michigan Advance, the bill is a suicide prevention bill, period. Michigan Advance reports that conversion therapy is defined by the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry are interventions purported to alter same-sex attractions or an individual's gender expression with the specific aim to promote heterosexuality as a preferable outcome. The Academy says that such therapies lack scientific credibility and clinical utility. Additionally, there is evidence that such interventions are harmful. Unfortunately, a MAGA Christian nationalist group known as Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, which successfully sued for the right of Hobby Lobby to discriminate against women who simply wanted contraception coverage from Obamacare, well, it's behind a lawsuit to overturn this ban on conversion therapy in Michigan. I mean, there was this 2020 report by the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law showing that gay, lesbian, and bisexuals who went under so-called conversion therapy are twice more as likely to report multiple suicide attempts than those who didn't. I mean, come on now. Where are the so-called America First MAGA people demanding individual freedom and telling everyone that government should get out of people's lives? Oh, but unless they're gay or transgender. Yet, here they are, the same people, the same MAGA clowns celebrating the sick practice of conversion therapy. But this is where today's MAGA Republican Christian nationalists are. And this is what they are. And this is who they are. They're just weird people. I mean, why wouldn't you want your family members being who they are? I just don't get it. And while states like Florida are hurting gay rights and passing Don't Say Gay bills in schools, Michigan is showing true Christian values by welcoming all people regardless of their sexual identity. And that means more people will eventually want to move here and stay here and work here and raise a family here, kind of like Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg and his partner as they're raising their 2 kids here. It's just so sad that the so-called freedom-loving MAGA Republicans have this weird fascination, but also hurtful and hateful fascination over what someone's sexual identity is. I mean, how is trying to force people to be who they aren't small government? And that's why I celebrate, and I'm so thankful to Michigan Democrats that we're not only the anti-weird Florida, we are a pro-freedom state of Michigan.
You're listening to the Left of Lansing podcast. The music you're hearing is by Wanderbeats. To hear the latest project, check out Space Leopard on your favorite streaming site. Now back to our favorite progressive voice in Michigan. It's Pat Johnston.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of The Left of Lansing. I just wanted to send a quick thank you to my good friend Rich for everything that he does with leftoflansing.com. And I'd like to remind everyone that Left of Lansing is on YouTube as well. I'm starting to put up some content there that's not available here on the podcast, but that's also where you can listen to all the episodes there as well. Thanks again to Sarah May-Seward for being such a great guest here this week. You know, after hearing Sarah and with Kamala Harris now at the top of the Democratic ticket, it's nice, isn't it? It's just nice to feel some energy, some real excitement, and some hope for a change, isn't it? It really is. But don't get comfortable. There's a lot of work to be done, and MAGA Republicans are not simply just going to fade away. We've got to keep up the hard work, the messaging, and the connecting with one another, which is why, if you can, visit the Rally Against Project 2025, organized by our good friends at Distill Social this Saturday evening in Marquette, Holland, Ann Arbor, and Ferndale. Again, visit distillsocial.com for more info, or just read the notes from this episode to get a link. And I have to say, I think I'm starting to feel a little better as well, because the Detroit Lions just opened up training camp this week. Oh yeah, this state has been waiting for Lions football ever since the NFC Championship loss, and the season is nearly here, everyone. Until next week, remember, take the battle to them. Thank you, Michigan.
The Left of Lansing podcast was produced by Pat Johnston, written by Pat Johnston, researched by Pat Johnston, edited by Pat Johnston, and hosted by, yes, Pat Johnston. Technical assistance by Dr. Heather. And thanks to our good friend Kirsten for the awesome podcast logo. Remember to visit leftoflansing.com for more news and information. Thanks again for listening to the Left of Lansing podcast.